The mismanagement of the University of Ibadan. The management of the University of Ibadan has raised concern over the increasing number of female students engaging in egg donation as a source of income. The University Health Service warned that while egg donation has brought hope to many families struggling with infertility, it should not be seen as a permanent source of income or a side hustle. An internal memorandum to that effect was signed by the director of the University Health Service, Dr. Aderonke Ajayi. Ajayi lamented the growing trend within the university community involving the recruitment and participation of female students as egg donors for in vitro fertilization, often through individuals, agents, or agencies. She explained that egg donation involves the use of hormonal medication to stimulate the ovaries, a process that carries several short-term health risks, including abdominal pain, breast tenderness, bloating, mood swings, and a condition known as ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. It may also result in infections, bleeding, ovarian torsion, injury to internal organs such as the bladder, the bowel, and psychological distress. The expert then warned that some egg donors have reported long-term effects, including the possibility of losing fertility, stressing that current research is still inconclusive about who is medically safe to donate eggs and how many times a person can safely undergo the procedure. In terms of safety, she advised that egg donation should not be done more than 3 times a year, urging students to always choose reputable clinics that follow proper medical guidelines and prioritize donor safety. Now, I have to say, for a large part, I have to blame our film industry for this menace in the society. We've seen a lot of movies that have oftentimes talked about the idea of donating eggs as a source of income for lower income communities and families, especially within Hollywood. So it doesn't come as a surprise to me that a lot of young women are now seeing this as a means to an end, especially because the number of women who are also struggling with infertility is quite high. And the process for in vitro fertilization is quite expensive, aside from the fact that adoption is not the easiest route for a lot of families to take on as well. So I think it still boils down to the standard issue of poverty. The fact that these women, first of all, might not even be aware of the situation and how damning it is to their health. And they just see this as a way to make some quick bucks, if you ask me. So it's quite sad. And I also think there's also that part of us trivializing serious medical conditions. There's several things that have come into Nigeria, again, through Hollywood. Things like weight loss injections, for instance, where you find a lot of women just kind of treating it like it's just a normal thing. Egg donors treating it like it's a normal thing without fully understanding the gravity of what we are doing. So there definitely needs to be that sensitization about these issues.
Absolutely. I agree in part with you, particularly in the area that this is a timely admonition, coming from the management of the University of Ibadan. And I think that it's an important story that the Punch published on Friday. I think that the director of University Health Services, who issued a statement, Dr. Aderonke Ajayi, should be commended for this message. I'm not too sure if it will be fair to lay the blame squarely at the feet of filmmakers or Nollywood. Because
I didn't say Nollywood, I said Hollywood.
Hollywood.
Nollywood hasn't really produced a lot of movies around egg donors, but a lot of movies in Hollywood are.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to say is that, art mirrors life,
real life,
real life sometimes. And therefore, for undergraduates who are engaging in this sort of a thing, are adults, they're university, students, and they're informed, so the choices that they make really should be their choices, the consequences of it.
I have to disagree with you there, because we do have a lot of young women, also, teenagers who are going to universities. You can go to university at the age of 17, 16. And so even though sometimes, even if you're 18 or 19 and you're legally an adult, you might not be fully informed. And that's why I do appreciate, as you said, she should be commended for releasing this statement.
Absolutely.
Because she's talking about long-term effects. And it's very few, teenage women who know the long-term effects to their body, their fertility, and their health of such things. And it's also not limited to to Nigeria. You know, even in America, you do see, you know, ads for egg donors and such other things. But I do think that this is important when we talk about particularly women who are poorer, because it's not a side hustle as though, you know, that it's not something that's taking people to the promised land. It's that people are becoming more and more desperate in times like this, to the point where they are selling their bodies or their body parts, you know, and that is something that we need proper regulation on when it comes to health services. We need proper guidance on, you know, what clinics should be allowed to do such things, and what are the limits. You know, if you say, okay, 3 a year, then there should be legal requirements for that. There should be regulation for something so serious, because it is young, poor women who are being preyed on the most. And people are impressionable, particularly if you're going to university, you're just out of secondary school. You might fully not understand, you know, what the long-term implications would be, and you might be dealing with financial pressure both from home or in the university system. And so I do commend the statement, but I do think that more needs to be done by way of regulation.
Exactly.
All right.
Well, let's move on to the next story. Now, days after more than 80 people were reported killed in Boko's local government area of Plateau State, 52 other persons were this week similarly confirmed killed in another attack, with many others being injured. This time in 2 communities in Bassa local government area of the state. Now, Arise correspondent Douglas Francis filled in the next report, which he says the latest attack has left affected communities in grief as survivors recount their horror.
To terms with the recent attacks in Boko's local government area, where over 80 persons were killed and communities displaced. Yet another attack has hit Zike and Kimakwa communities in Kwali district of Bassa local government area, where 52 persons were killed in cold blood at night. Residents of the community who trooped out in large numbers, pouring out their hearts to the government and security agencies demanding urgent intervention. Chairman of the Irigwe Youth Development Association tells journalists that the attackers arrived in the early hours on Monday, where they shot sporadically and killed many victims while asleep.
Yesterday night, we received a distress call. Fulani came in mass, in numbers, and they attacked this particular village that we are seeing. And today we record a huge number of casualties. This thing is still reoccurring in this state and in this local government. As you all know, we signed a peace pact with these people, but it never worked. And I don't think we'll ever go into such agreement again, because I look at that as a mere mirage. It's just a mess to us, because you agree on something that the other party is not following.
Many here say the attacks are becoming too many as the Irigwe nation is under siege. They want the federal government and security agencies to put a stop to the attacks.
As usual, on their normal activities, having their normal night, observing their normal day, night, and all of a sudden this unfortunate event, these marauders, these bloodsuckers, visited them early hours of today. We have passed several motions. We have called on the state government to these ugly incidents. We have profound solutions. We have asked that settler campuses of security should be opened in border states.
Situation of what happened. So Fulani headsmen invaded this community, killed and macheted the Irigwe people. I am telling you, the situation is very disheartening, very sad to see. If you turn your camera to look at women, children, aged crying, you will yourself, even as journalists, also join in shedding tears, because the situation is bad. To say a single attack, over 50 people have been killed.
Yeah, if I will give you the account of women that lost their husband, we have about 570-something women that Fulani people killed their husband. We have so many widows and orphans in this community. So we are tired. This thing enough is enough. We want Fulani people to stop doing all this thing that they are doing to Irigwe people. We don't want them.
Despite the security measures put in place by the state government in tackling insecurity, the residents say it is yet to yield positive results.
More death, more sad news from the north central region of Nigeria, or the Middle Belt. Now, these deaths that we have seen coming from Plateau State, but we've also seen, trouble in Benue State recently. And it's following a same pattern. It's following a similar pattern. We're dealing with scarce resources in Nigeria. We have herdsmen clashing with farmers over their land. And it's something that, for me, it's not just something that is sad. It's not just something that causes me to be hurt. It also causes a lot of anger, because it seems that there is no political resolve from our political class to solve this issue. There needs to be ranching in Nigeria. There needs to be. It is a serious crisis. If we do not have ranching in Nigeria, this is going to continue to happen across the country, and not just in Plateau State. And there's been a lot of talk, about who is to blame. Is it the governor? Is it the security apparatus? Is it the NSA? Is it the president? The president, who is, of course, enjoying Easter Sunday, I believe, today in London, sending us Easter messages from London or Paris. I can't, keep up with his travels. What I do know is that he's not in the country, while scores of Nigerians are being killed. It is actually, I think, worth talking about that this is an emergency situation. Yes, it has happened in the past, but why does it continue to happen? It is an issue that can be solved, and it feels like there is no political will to solve it.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree with you, Adesua. But we know where the president is. We may not agree with the fact that
London?
Yeah, that's the information
yes, I was
from the
confused,
team.
Paris or London.
That he has
France.
left Paris,
Yes.
and that he has moved to England, where he will spend Easter and then return to Nigeria. And I agree with you that, like many people, I believe this is like the 59th or 60th time that he will be out of the country on various trips. So it is concerning that while people were shouting and making noise here, it was London that called on the president, and not Nigeria, where he needed to deal with a few issues. But you're right that this is an emergency. How many more people will we have to lose before the authorities, particularly the president, will realize that there is fire on the mountain? When he tells the governor to deal with the issues, what does he expect the governor to do? I follow the speech that the governor made, that that he's trying his best. He would do a lot more. But of course, this brings back the question of who is the chief security officer in the state. We know that he doesn't command any troop. He's not the commander-in-chief of the state. He's just a chief executive, in the state. He
command the police within his...
He can't snap his finger and command anybody. Yes, he will have security meetings and everything. So it's a federal issue, but the commander-in-chief does not appear to have done enough, in terms of the sort of emergency. And if we look at what is happening in Plateau, in Benue, Pig Borno, and a few other, states, it looks to me like the issue of insecurity is back with vengeance. And it doesn't look like we're confronting it with the, with the sort of might that is required. The people in Plateau know those who are killing them. Why are we pretending that that is not the issue? And then what has happened to the livestock ministry that the president created, that he said that he will be the answer to all the problems of farmers, herders clash? It doesn't look to me like that agency or ministry is up and doing. And what's the point, therefore, to have created it in the first instance?
This then makes me then ask the question of when has the Nigerian political space or the Nigerian leadership ever taking insecurity as priority? We're looking at a case where between December 2023 and February 2024, there's been over 1,000 people killed, reportedly. And we keep having this, we've been having this conversation since 2023. Now the governor is taking it a step further in Plateau to say this is pure genocide. Genocide Watch has 10 stages of genocide, and they said that this is the 9th and the 10th stage, which includes just eradication completely, eradication of a particular sect of people or community. Minister Dulong, the former minister, also echoed the same thoughts, saying the exact same thing. So if everyone is saying these are the issues, and these conversations did not begin today, the big question is, why do we not take insecurity serious? That's it. There's no word that has not been said. There's no complaint that has not been made. This is not the first time we're seeing people being buried in mass graves across different states in Nigeria. This is not the first of this type of situation, whether in this presidency or the previous presidency. The question is, while we're talking about the constitutionality of certain decisions, and we're talking about the rule of law, and we're talking about separation of powers, and we're giving it so much attention. Everyone is involved in the development of infrastructure in their states. Last week, we spoke about Akwa Ibom. We spoke about Cross River State, all doing amazing things in their state. The Minister of Works is doing fantastic work here in Lagos, Nigeria as well. Everyone is busy, but guess what we're not busy with? Insecurity. We are not busy with insecurity, and the big question is why. We need to move from calling on government agencies. They're aware. They're very aware. We're not calling, I am not calling on any government agency. I'm only asking a question. Why is insecurity not a major priority for you? Yeah. Because for these people, it is. For the people who are losing their kids, losing their mothers, their fathers, for generations who are being exterminated like cockroaches, it is an issue. So we're not calling on anyone. We just want to know why it's not a priority so people can begin to know what to do next. Because calling on them, if you ask me, is just another rhetoric, and we're not about to do that here. Speaking about this, governors of the People's Democratic Party have again thrown their weight behind the governor of Rivers State, Siminalayi Fubara, following his suspension and declaration of a state of emergency in the state. They made this known in Ibadan after a meeting of the PDP Governors Forum where they denied plans to join any potential opposition coalition while urging the federal government to address the frightening level of insecurity in Nigeria. Arise correspondent Olutayo Famous Cole has more.
A convergence of elected governors of the People's Democratic Party, and they have converged on Ibadan, Oyo State, to deliberate on how best to reposition the nation's major opposition party, the PDP, ahead of future elections. After a closed-door meeting which lasted for over 6 hours, the governors briefed journalists on critical resolutions reached during their meeting. One of the major resolutions here is that they will not support any plans to join a coalition as being canvassed by former PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar and other opposition figures. But they said they would welcome any coalition that supports the party to promote democracy and good governance.
Speculation about the possible merger of political parties, groups, and/or associations, the forum resolved that the PDP will not join any coalition or merger. However, the PDP, as a major opposition party, welcomes any party, persons, or groups that are willing to join it with a view to wresting power and enthroning good leadership in 2027. 2. The forum reiterates its position taken in Asaba on the issue of the national secretary of the party, but in the wake of the Supreme Court judgment, the forum resolved to recommend that the deputy national secretary acts as a national secretary. The forum reasserts our collective determination to avert a rape of our constitutional democracy, hence the decision of approaching the Supreme Court to give a clear-cut verdict on the interpretation of the provision of the law on the declaration of state of emergency in any state of the Federation. The forum therefore reiterates its solidarity with His Excellency Siminalayi Fubara on the ordeal into which his state and people have been plunged into by the declaration of the state of emergency. And we reiterate our commitment to stand with him till the end.
Also lamented the worsening insecurity across the nation, asking the federal government to tackle it and reduce the incessant loss of lives, especially in Borno, Katsina, Edo, and Plateau states.
The forum finds alarming the worsening security situation in the country, as evidenced in parts of the country, especially Borno, Plateau, Katsina, and Edo states. The forum calls for the review and reordering of priorities and strategies, including adopting a bottom-up template that guarantees the subnationals to constitute an effective line of defense against security breaches. While raising the concerns above, we condemn the recent attacks in Plateau State and commiserate with the government and people of the state, especially those who lost their lives and properties during the recent mishap.
Also announced is a national meeting set for next month, where a zoning committee will be constituted ahead of the party's national convention set for August 28 to 30, 2025, to be held in Kano State. Suspended River State Governor Similai Fubara was absent from the meeting, which was chaired by Bauchi State Governor Bala Mohammed, who is also the chairman of the PDP Governors Forum. Olutai of School, Arise News, Ibadan.
And just like we rightly said there, the PDP governors, I think there were lots of issues on their plates in that particular meeting, specifically Rivers State, what's going on, talks on a coalition. There's a lot happening within PDP right now that a lot of people would believe that there needs to be some kind of miracle for a strong candidate to pull up in 2027. There just needs to be something. We saw Nyesom Wike speak extensively yesterday about the issues in Rivers State to journalists. Them also mentioning the security situation, condemning it. I mean, what's more to be said? They said it all.
They spoke very well
they said it all.
as a block, in my opinion. And what they said about Rivers State, their colleague, who is on suspension, is worthy of praise, that they will stand with him while they are still pursuing the case in court, which is the proper thing to do. What they said about the insecurity in the country, I mean, they couldn't have, that came a tad too late, in my opinion. You don't need to assemble in Ibadan before you start, hammering on that, because that is the duty of the opposition. I see, of course, that, a number of the opposition figures as individuals, they engage in that, Atiku, Peter Obi, etc. And of course, more importantly, will be the what is leading the political side of it, what is leading towards 2027. And it is obvious, like you said, Kachi, that well, we can't say like Karl Mayer said the other time in his book that this house has fallen, but it looks to me that this house has fallen. Like PDP is struggling badly. When you put what they have said, you add it to what Wike is saying on one side, to what Fayose is saying, to what Umueno said outside of that fold that he will support Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. That for me is a clear
divided house.
Totally.
You know what? My heart goes out to any PDP members or the PDP loyalists, because they must be running helter-skelter. They must be confused, truly. And I really like that you brought up what Nyesom Wike said, because he said that the governors would suffer losses, especially if they're trying to back a coalition candidate. Fayose saying that governors would prefer Tinubu to Atiku. Pastor Umo Eno, the governor of Akwa Ibom, coming out himself to even, say that Tinubu will win again in 2027. Now, Wike is saying that governors will lose. I think he would understand that intimately, because of the G5 governors who did follow Wike around in the last election cycle. Only Seyi Makinde was able to survive. I believe Ugwuanyi and Ikpeazu are now clamoring for the ambassadorial appointments. I think everyone else in the G5
was the only one seeking re-election then.
No, they sought the Senate, remember, and they all lost their election. So I think him talking about people losing. People on his team too have lost before. But I think, going beyond that, what we're seeing is a lot of machinations and focus on the 2027 elections. And it's very disheartening. Yes, it's important that they're standing beside Similai Fubara. Yes, it's important that they're calling out the insecurity situation in the country. But when we're seeing so much focus being on the elections, particularly we're seeing machinations also in the Northwest. When we're seeing so much focus on elections, it also calls into question if our electioneering process is actually beneficial for us. Because if by the half term you're already looking at the next election, then you're not focused on the work you have to do. So I think for me, that's one thing that has stood out to me, is that obviously talk of 2027 is on the brains of opposition, and that makes sense, and particularly those who are not in government. But these are governors who are still in government, right? And I think with all this focus on 2027, what are the dividends of democracy for Nigerians in the meantime?
For PDP, this is how the cookies crumble. But we'll see what happens. All right, let's proceed. As yet to be identified, gunmen on Tuesday this week attacked the family house of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, who represents Kogi Central in her hometown of Hima in Okei local government area of Kogi State. In a statement issued by a media office, Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan condemned the unprovoked attack. The statement reads in part, armed men mistakenly believing the senator was present vandalized windows in her grandfather's house. Fortunately, security operatives swiftly responded and repelled the attackers. This calculated assault appears to be a direct response to Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan's courageous stance against Senate President Godswill Akpabio, whom she accused of sexual harassment. We urge the Inspector General of Police to immediately reinstate her security details. Kogi is still in the news. Senator Natasha, of course, is still in the news. But what we have witnessed, I believe that was on Tuesday, is condemnable on all scores. And I like the fact that the police in Kogi, have come out with a statement to say that, they are commencing an investigation immediately. And I believe that they also offered protection to the senator. We'll see how it goes, but of course this speaks to how bad the situation in Kogi State, namely Natasha, the former governor, the current governor, all of whom she has named, in a plot that she claimed, to assassinate her. Was what happened suggestive of that, plot? Let's hope that the police will dig deep into what actually happened, and if possible, apprehend the three hoodlums who were said to have carried out the attack. But I also like the fact that her community, rose in her defense, to chase away the attackers. It would have been lovely if at least one of them had been arrested, But this is where we are. It is not looking fine, but then let's hope that the police will not allow it to descend to a state of anarchy.
This should not happen. I would say for a fact that this should not even be happening in the first place. And I think it's quite ironic that she had mentioned plans of an attempted attack on her and mentioned a few people's names if should anything happen to her or any member of her family. So I would say that this is in very poor taste. I would say I've always said this, the situation around what's going on in Kogi with Senator Natasha, the governor, the former governor, the Senate president, it's a reflection of it's a pure reflection of our society. It's a pure reflection of the political society in Nigeria, where there's always an attempt to silence and just in a bullish way keep people from speaking up for themselves. We're talking about her house being attacked and her family also being attacked. We're just talking about insecurity in Plateau State. Over 1,000 people killed in the space of less than 2 years. No life is more important than the other. The same attention that's given to one should be given to the other. So it's a very confusing space, really, almost hard to address because you're almost cherry picking what's important and what's not. So it's just sad to me.
Yes, I mean, beyond it being sad, it's definitely something that should be investigated. Again, we've called for the allegations to be investigated. Now we're calling for an attack on her family home to be investigated. Obviously, she has names, but again, these are also claims that would need to be investigated. The claims that she has raised would also need to be investigated. But I do think that one thing that I can say that people have taken from this situation with Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, particularly concerning the fact that her security was pulled by the Senate president when that whole trial against her happened on the Senate floor, and particularly that the former Senate president Ahmed Lawan stood up and said that we should not withdraw her security, and that would send a bad precedent. But however, they withdrew her security, and now we're seeing that something has happened. I think that leaves a very bad taste in my mouth. But, that's all that we have for you on the week that was.